Good evening, everybody.
How are
Bunch of nerds.
Who have we got in the chat?
We've got us four.
Make yourself known. Otherwise, it'll be us four just talking to each other at each other. How are all four of
That's
you?
why we do this.
Hello there.
Doing good.
Doing good. It's been a long day, mate. For a Monday, I was sat there at one point. I was thinking, is it only still Monday? And it is. But yeah. Other than that, glad to be here. A lot to talk about. I feel like it's been a busy nerd day as well, and a busy nerd weekend. So looking forward to I'm glad I'm part of this one.
Good. Harvey, how are you?
Yeah, I'm good. A lot of Lego leaks that I'm sure we'll talk about. Some of them pretty exciting. So I'm in a good mood.
Nice. And Nathan, how are you?
Well, to counter Harvey's being in a good mood, I'd say I'm in a bad mood.
Oh,
I'm doing good. Talking about Liam Neeson's comment that Star Wars is losing its touch, so to speak. So I'm looking forward to that. I think there's quite a lot we can talk about with that and unpack.
Yeah, I think that's going to be quite an interesting part of it, that Variety article. And as well as Lego leaks and Liam Neeson's controversial comments, we are also got a bit of a movie theme for the first couple of segments. We've got a little review of Revenge of the Sith, which was this week's film club, if you like. And then Liam is also going over some underappreciated films and TV shows that we all have. But without further ado, we will start with Film Club.
Is Harvey eating pizza?
He kind of the guilt on his face as he took a bite.
No.
Yeah, Revenge of the Sith was this week's Film Club, and what a film to start it off, if I do say so myself. Save my opinion. Go on then, fill us in, Liam.
No. I'm going to go last on this one because I'm interested. I'm always really interested to see why people rave about it and love it so much. So I'm going to sit quietly and for once and let you lot.
Right, I'll kick off. So I'm biased with Revenge of the Sith because when I first kind of found Star Wars as a child, that was the first movie I went into, and I feel like it is quite a I don't want to say a cartoony film, but it is quite there's lots of action, there's a bit of comedy, there's lots of bright colors. It's very visually appealing for a child that just likes kind of laser swords and Star Wars and things like that. But as far as now that I watch it back as a grown-up, it's kind of the film itself isn't perfect, but I think I've got that nostalgia on it that growing up with it, I absolutely love it. Always will.
I think because of the time it came out in 2005, it was a lot of kids' first Star Wars movies that they saw. I mean, it was for me. It was my first Star Wars movie I ever saw, but I only saw sort of 40 minutes of it, about 60% of the way in, when it was on TV once, and that's about it.
I remember
I watched them all.
So this one, Revenge of the Sith, was my first Star Wars in a cinema. I'd seen the other ones before, and I'd gone to see it with my dad. So it's always going to be special in that way. I think it was one I saw in the cinema. I've seen one in there. I can't quite remember which one because I was quite young. It must have been this one. But I definitely watched it in preparation for this week. So I didn't not have time, and I've definitely seen it this week. But no, I've seen it enough to know all the ins and outs and remember it all. It's just nostalgia is definitely there.
Yeah.
And you can't beat Jewel on Mustafar. That is the peak, one of the peak scenes of Star Wars. That whole scene, the dialogue is everything's perfect about that, but obviously there is flaws in the film, as with any film really. I mean, yeah, it is what it is.
It's certainly not perfect, but it's our not perfect. It's my not perfect movie. and I love it. I was going to start off the film club by saying we reviewed everyone's favorite Star Wars movie to then take a screenshot of Liam's reaction, but he already said he's going last, so I'm excited to see.
He's cooking.
Yeah, I can tell he's brewing in that top corner there.
I am ready.
Awusa. Nah, so I think you guys have hit the nail on the head. It was like your first Star Wars film, even like your first one in the cinema, so it's more that nostalgic experience, and I totally get that. And I, you know, when we talk about like social media now and the voice of Star Wars that's out there, there's probably a bigger vocal voice for the prequels than there is the original trilogy, so because it's just demographic and all that. So I think there's just a bit more noise out there, but yeah, just very different experience. I mean, I went to see Phantom Menace in the cinema, and actually everybody loved Phantom Menace at the time. It all kind of fell apart with Attack of the Clones, and then everybody went into Revenge of the Sith, kind of already like hating on it before it went in. But yeah, I just think, like, you know, I'll always look at the missed opportunity with that. I mean, you think the sequels get a lot of grief, but the one thing that I would love to have seen is the prequels made now in the styling of the sequels, that that real live action in real life, you know, minimal CGI. And it was the best CGI. Like, I remember at the time, everybody was like, oh, like, it'll never get better than this. And then they just took it to a whole other level. But like, how good would the prequels be like now if they were made now? And that's the one thing I really like about the Phantom Menace. It has a lot of real scene setting, whereas Attack of the Clones and Revenge of the Sith are very green screen. I think as well, Ewan did a hell of a lot better in Revenge of the Sith, but like, and I'm talking about it in comparison to the Phantom Menace here, but like Liam Neeson just absolutely carried the prequels, and like how good he is. Like, he's the best, puts the best performance in the Phantom Menace, that kind of anything. But yeah, I think that's how I look at it. It's not a bad film by any means. I always enjoy watching it. I don't watch it often, probably once, twice a year, like depending on if it's on. But like for me, where you guys have that nostalgia of like those, like that little child and being like, oh my God, like, you know, and I totally get that. And I definitely wouldn't try and take that away from anyone. But my position is I'll always look at it as that moody teenager, like late teens, who thinks he knows better. Everything's like grief, but then also that missed opportunity, that like excitement of those films not existing, having already watched the original trilogy 100 times. And like the special edition, so this is, I'm showing my age here, but I've still got the VHS version of the special edition of the original trilogy, and every one of them started with an interview with George Lucas. And in Return of the Jedi, the interview before Return of the Jedi, he says, we are going to make the prequels. So that was like social media then, was like this 5-minute interview at the beginning of a video that you had to fast forward through because you'd seen it so many times. But yeah, I think for me, it was just that thing of like, it didn't hit the spot of what people hoped and wanted.
Yeah.
And there's a bit of Hayden in that as well, but like how much of that was Hayden, how much of that was the direction, I suppose only those on set will know.
So you're not a Hayden fan?
I'm not a Hayden hater. It just, he's very, you know, we always say that he's seen, like he's told to play, like he was told to play like the role cold and all of that. And he definitely does that. But what we don't know, like I don't believe that like hearsay of what we told, what's talked about in the fandom is the true context. We'll never know what like George Lucas, how he told him to act that role. But yeah, like it. I think when you look at his wider career, he didn't go on to do much. I know obviously Star Wars like probably affected him, but he did Jumper just after. I think it was just after or just one of it, and he, you know, he's never been like You know, he's not a DiCaprio or anything like that, is he? He's not winning any Oscars. So, and that's not taking anything away from him. It just, I think as much as I probably apply the grey tinge to it, I think a lot of people look at Revenge of the Sith through rose-tinted glasses.
Yeah, because a lot of people have the nostalgia for it, but I mean, obviously, how old was you when the prequels came out? Like 40, something like that. So obviously, don't have the nostalgia for it. Okay, that wasn't even a genuine question. I just wanted to say that joke. So Max, off you go.
I thought you said 14 because I was 14 when Phantom Menace came out.
Well, I was just I had this comment pinned. I was just wondering, like, it seems like the general consensus in the chat and us four is it's like you can appreciate that it's not the world's greatest film and probably not the greatest Star Wars film, but that big nostalgia word seems to just cloud, and as you said, put those rose-tinted goggles on that kind of almost tricks people into like, everyone likes this film because of that nostalgia side of it. And I think when Kenobi came out, it was Ewan's quote where he said something along the lines of like, it's nice that these films are finally getting appreciated by the audience they were made for. Because obviously they were trashed when they first came out because the purists were like, this is garbage. Whereas then the people that grew up with them are kind of in their late 20s, early 20s, early 30s, like actually kind of like, oh no, they weren't so bad. We enjoyed them.
So a couple of things there as well. Like, as I say, definitely know, like, I do enjoy watching Attack of the Clones is a bit of a stretch. There are moments, but like it is a tough watch. But like I do enjoy watching Revenge of the Sith, and Phantom Menace is my favorite of the prequels. But yeah, I also think you guys had, like, when you that love of Anakin subconsciously bleeds in from the Clone Wars as well. Like the Clone Wars Anakin is so far removed from Hayden Anakin, and I think sometimes because you guys grew up with them almost as one character, it's hard to separate. Whereas for me, I didn't. So like they were very different. They were separate, and you know the Clone Wars went a long way to help the prequels, which is great, and it kind of leans into the question later on around too much Star Wars and all that, but we'll kind of not get into that. But
Revenge
I think
of
it's
the
just
Sith was my favorite before I watched the Clone Wars.
Yeah, but then that's like
it's the nostalgia thing, yeah.
And it's funny because again, like coming away from Star Wars, talk about like my segment, like what film doesn't get enough love. Like I'm not talking about Star Wars and that, but I would imagine all of them are very imperfect projects as well. It's just anything Star Wars gets put on this pedestal that is so scrutinized by the fan base that, like, if it's not perfect, it's like it's trash. But realistically, it's not. And there are so many decent, stuff out there that, like for me, Empire Strikes Back is my favorite Star Wars film, but it's so good for me. I can't watch it all the time because it's almost like draining to watch. Like it's kind of one of those you have to watch every so often. I think for me, A New Hope is probably the most rewatchable.
Do you guys watch them? Like, do you ever sit there and just individually watch one movie, or do you kind of go, right, I'm going to marathon the main 6 or the main 9 movies?
I'd want to. I haven't done it before because I haven't had time. But I think if I could like book a weekend off or something, or a couple of days, and just do all of them, the whole Star Wars of everything, bar the TV shows, I think that'd be quite fun to do.
That's usually what I would do. I would sit down and watch them all. But there are times when I'll watch like an individual one, like, before a con, if I'm cosplaying as Anakin, I'll watch Revenge of the Sith at 3 a.m. to get in the mindset. So I can like mold my personality to Anakin Skywalker. And when I did Kylo Ren, I watched The Rise of Skywalker before MCM Birmingham. Just literally, to get the. So, and then every now and again, I'll just stick Revenge of the Sith on because it's the best. But yeah, apart from that, usually if I'm watching the Star Wars films, I'll start on The Phantom Menace and then end on Return of the Jedi, and then maybe throw in a Rogue One or a Solo.
So Chris, Star Wars and Beyond's joined and actually kind of made the point I was going to make. It's very like I'll rarely kind of do a binge. Sometimes I'll be like, nah, there's nothing on, so I'll watch a Star Wars film or I'll watch something Star Wars. But there's something about like 5 o'clock on a Saturday afternoon and ITV like Return of the Jedi's on or something, and you're like, all right, I'm in, and like. It's so true of so many things. Like Lord of the Rings is probably a really good example of that. Like it's on enough that you're able to watch it, but not so much that it overkills it. But like I've got the extended Blu-ray editions, and I can't even remember the last time I got them out of the case. But like if I ever see them on, I'm like, I'm in.
Same with Back to the Future for me. Back to the Future's on TV quite a lot, and I'll always, if it's on, sit there and watch it. No matter when it is in the movie, I'll just turn it on and watch the rest of it.
Do you also find, like, this, it seems really stupid, but the watch experience is different if it's on ITV and you know that there's an advert every 15 minutes. You know that you could just go to Disney Plus and play it from the beginning with no adverts. But there is something about, like, turning on the TV, you're 25 minutes into the movie already, but you just kind of sit there and you can't force yourself to go and watch it advertless. You just keep watching it on ITV.
Yeah.
Like, it's just something about it that just makes it so much more enjoyable.
I don't even know what that'd be. It's bizarre.
It is, man. I guess it's probably like we're probably the last generation to grow up without with TV, without the ability to fast forward and rewind and have Netflix. Like growing up with TV, it was like whatever was on the telly is what you watched. And it's only in the last kind of 5-6 years or so that you've got that on demand, like recording everything. You can watch it when you want. So I guess it's kind of like a bit of that.
Confession time. I remember, I'm going to sound so old, but I remember when Channel 5 was invented and we only had 4 channels. Like we had Sky, but not everybody had Sky.
The Sky was just a big blue thing up there.
It was like, well, it was when they used to have like the massive satellite dishes, and Sky was about 70 channels. It was quality.
The good old days.
The good old days. Used to walk 15 miles.
I as much as I do like that kind of 5 p.m. ITV2 banger, I need to binge. Like I do it once a year, especially with Lord of the Rings and the Dark Knight trilogy. Like just one Saturday or one weekend in the Lord of the Rings' case, I will do The Hobbit, followed by the Lord of the Rings, and then like next weekend I'll do all of the Batman films. And I can't bring myself to just kind of go, oh right, I'm going to watch The Prisoner of Azkaban this weekend. Like I can't watch it unless I've watched the first two, and I find that with Star Wars as well. Like I need to. Even if it's kind of spread out over a few weekends, I can't just kind of pluck in and watch like just one random one-off film.
That's what I've been doing with The Hobbit. I mean, not The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings. I probably started watching them for the first time like 2-3 months ago, and I'm still yet to watch the last Lord of the Rings. I need to get it done. Yeah, but I think me doing that would just make you boil internally. You'd hate that.
As long as you don't fast forward like Frodo's scenes, like some heathens.
No.
You fast forward the Hobbit scenes. Can't stand them.
No. I've got my thoughts on them scenes, but I wouldn't fast forward them.
I still need to watch it in general. Even my university professors like getting on me to watch them.
Are you joking?
You've never seen Lord of the Rings?
Mm-mm.
I thought you'd
seen Harry Potter either.
Pardon?
You've not seen Harry Potter either, have you?
No.
Why is he on this podcast? Can you just kick him off, please, man?
Are you lost? That I thought I had a fairly like controversial comment coming next, but that just kind of trumps it all. I was going to say like growing up, I used to skip the original 3 Star Wars films whenever I watched it because I didn't like the graphics. Like because I was an 8-year-old. And it was like just seeing Puppet Yoda and compared to like the visuals of the prequel trilogy. I just always skipped them because I was a snob.
Yoda instead of crappy CGI Yoda.
That's the thing. It's like now that I'm like looking back on it and I'm like, you know what, they hold their own. Whereas just as a child, I just couldn't watch them because of the graphics and the CGI or the lack thereof.
James, you have to, as his kind of elder family member, you have to take some responsibility for this. Like you can't
between Paige and James, they need to get him.
I mean, give her a chance. You know, I'm sure, like because they live so far apart, you know, they don't see each other that often. I'm sure when they do see each other, they're like eating pizza and all sorts. So like,
yeah, just
they've got other things to do. No, just Harvey's always eating pizza.
I didn't realise they had a full-on like Italian pizza oven in the back of an X-wing. Yeah, that's funny. Well,
so just to close that conversation out, this is a question specifically to Harvey on the back of our conversation last week about the Fast and Furious franchise. Harvey, because you and I are like the Fast and Furious reps here. Do you ever put on, like, do you ever go and put a Blu-ray on or like find it on a streaming, or because one of the Fast films is always on ITV too? You just watch them when they're on.
I do, yeah. I think literally the Monday before we did, I think the second episode, I was watching Too Fast, Too Furious right afterwards. And then the first one was on last week as well. So I watched that one, but then I have like a few months ago, I just sat and watched all of them besides Hobbs and Shaw. But yeah, like if it's on ITV, I will watch it. But yeah,
I can't wait for Fast X. Max, you went on last week. What's your opinion on Fast and Furious?
I absolutely love them.
Let's go.
It's like I know they're shit movies, but I go into them expecting a really shit John Cena as a villain type of movie where they're going to catapult from space off the moon using a like regular car like winch. Like I'm expecting that, and so I leave fulfilled. Like if I was going into it expecting like a masterpiece, I'd be disappointed, and I think that's where people get the bad rap from. But I saw a funny thing the other day. It was on a podcast, and someone was saying how Ludacris's role, how he went from being like the local neighborhood car mechanic, within 3 movies was hacking the Pentagon. And it's that ridiculousness that I just love.
Life comes at you fast.
Say that I prefer the second, like the final 4 or 5, than I do the first 4 or 5, because I just I love the ridiculousness of it.
There's definitely a place for it. I do wonder, I was thinking about this last night because when I went to see Ant-Man, they played like an extended trailer of it, and it got me even more hyped for it.
I didn't get any trailers when I watched Ant-Man.
What?
I just got adverts. There was no trailers at all.
I'd be asking for a refund.
I know, the lights went dark, and I was like, trailers are starting now. Then it said Ant-Man. I was like, what?
I'm leaving now. I'm leaving.
I don't even care about the film.
With my hands over my ears, like not watching the adverts when I'm in the cinema, because I refuse to watch like adverts because I want to enjoy the film. I want to see it.
Okay.
It's like I think I said this on the Opieverse. I remember saying it on live, and then Liam looking at me like, I've said something disgusting, because I basically had. But I said there was like, I can't remember exactly what I said, but I said the kind of like Burger King movies. So the later Fast and Furious movies, on how, you know, you go to Burger King, you're not expecting quality. You're expecting quick, easy service that you're going to enjoy yourself for a couple of hours and be left somewhat satisfied. But you know, you don't go in and expect anything more. Well, there you go. That's exactly what he said. But yeah, the Fast and Furious movies, they are kind of like fast food, but movies.
Yeah.
You wouldn't sit there, enjoy yourself for a couple of hours. Don't expect greatness.
I'm going to be honest, Liam, we can probably sack off your entire segment, because we've just established that the most underappreciated movie franchise of all time is Fast and Furious.
Oh, I don't know. I think some might argue it's overappreciated. That's a conversation for another day, though. But yeah, but just final thing on it. I was watching the trailer and I thought it's literally tracking the MCU. Like they've been to space, like a bigger baddies and stuff. Like the next step is like a Fast and Furious multiverse where like Dom Toretto fights Dom Toretto, like good and evil. And then at the end, it's like two Dom Torettos in the barbecue, like in the garden having a barbecue, like
no, this is where it like crosses over with the Need for Speed universe and the multiverse collides or whatever, and it's Aaron
gone
Paul
in 60 seconds. Yeah, Nicolas Cage comes in and all for it. But yeah.
But yes, segueing into Liam's topic of conversation, I'll let him take the reins on this. But if the header doesn't give you a clue, it is all about all things that are underappreciated.
So yeah, I just added like a random thought last week, as is pretty much my life. But like, there's so many. We live in such an age of like TV shows and films, and it's probably more TV show. I did have a film in mind, but I had to kind of think of the film, and I've actually forgot what the film is now. But it's more TV shows. Like people get hyped, like Netflix. A lot of shows on Netflix get this like hype about them and everybody watches them, and then you're like, is that really that good? But then there are so many things that like we've all probably grown up with, TV shows and movies that just nobody ever talks about. So I just wanted to kind of like share some love. Probably should have been better last week when it was the Betty's Valentine's Day episode, but just share some love of like some things that people don't talk about. I'll start with my film because I've remembered my film, and I'll loop back and I'll finish with my TV show. But my film is a Mark Wahlberg film. Now, Mark Wahlberg is the actor equivalent of Fast and Furious. Like, he's such a bad actor, like in some ways, but like he just makes good, like watchable films. Like one that I could probably throw in that is Pain and Gain with The Rock. And like I love that film. People here like, but that's not my choice. My choice is actually a film called Shooter, which they then actually made a TV show series of on Netflix with Ryan Philippe. But if anybody's ever seen it or never seen it, he is he's a former, I think, Gulf War sniper, like Marine sniper. And then like there's this, he's retired, lives in the woods and all that, and then this government agency comes to recruit him to like say like, look, there's a threat against the president, and we believe it's a sniper. We want to use you to like figure out where they would take the shot from, but the whole thing is a ploy to set him up and make him the victim, and it's a genuine assassination attempt by this like government group. And then he's on the run, his name's out there as like the thing, and then he has to like prove himself like innocent. But it's got like, I love sniper shots, and it's got some awesome sniper shots in it, and so just some awesome little battle scenes. So that's the love for my film.
That film is in probably my, if we're going to categorize it, is in my top 10 5 p.m. on a Saturday night film.
Yeah. Well, it wouldn't be on a 5 p.m. because it's a bit, but yeah, it's on often.
Yeah.
I know what you mean.
I absolutely love it. I am completely with you on that. Underappreciated. It's almost like, it's almost that was his last proper non-comedic kind of, like, because now he kind of leans into being a bit of a shit actor, whereas like he was actually quite decent in that film.
Yeah.
I'm with you. Very good film.
Thank you. You can steer.
It's underappreciated.
On all the time.
So instantly, when I heard that, the one that came to my head was the animated Harley Quinn TV series, because I love it, but I have absolutely no one to talk about it with because I don't know a single other person on this earth who has watched it. So that's definitely the underappreciated one for me.
Is that the one with Keely Kawako who voices Harley Quinn? I've heard that's really good.
It is really like good. It's a bit more like risque and grown up.
Oh yeah.
Max is going to watch it right away.
It's like, do you know? Has anyone seen Invincible?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of like that sort of style where it's like animated and cartoony, but it does get a bit gruesome at times, and it is, it doesn't hold back a lot of the time as well. But yeah, it is really good. But as I say, like I know nobody who's seen it. But everyone I know who has seen it says it's really good. It's got 3 seasons at the minute.
And like, is it finished or is it ongoing?
It's ongoing, yeah.
Okay, so it's like relatively new.
Yeah. It only came out like 2020, something like that,
Is
2021.
it 4 on demand? Because it's on Channel 4, isn't it? Or E4?
Yeah, I think it is on E4, but I think it's like it comes out on DC streaming service. So that's why I think nobody's seen it, because nobody has DC streaming service. But then I think after the season's finished, like a few months later, they'll start rolling them out on E4. Something
Nice.
like
I have to look at that. That sounds like a little bit of me. Like, kind of, I love all things kind of our typical kind of nerd stuff, Star Wars, Marvel, DC. I love that, but then making it for grown-ups. So like Invincibles, The Boys, that kind of thing. And so a Batman themed 18 or 16 plus show sounds right up my street.
It does get like it gets pretty weird at times as well. But yeah, they're not trying to set up a universe or anything with it because shit goes down a lot of the time. Like they'll just randomly, like, not to spoil it because anyone hasn't seen it, but there's a bit where like the entire Justice League just gets put in the Phantom Zone and the entire city just goes to shit. It's crazy. Yeah, it's great.
Ideal.
Nice. Nathan?
Cool. So I had to delegate on movies a little bit. I had a little bit of thought going into it, and I couldn't think of anything until about half an hour before we started the podcast. It's a Disney film, and it doesn't get as much love at all compared to the other ones. I watched it again about a year ago, and it still held up from when I was younger. And it's Treasure Planet. Have any of you guys seen that one?
Never heard of it.
Is that the one?
There we go then.
Is that the one with the really fit white-haired girl? No,
I don't know, I can't remember.
I'm gonna have to
Max doesn't know films; he just knows like female actresses.
It's the old Disney style animation, and they're pirates, and it's in space, and they want to get all the treasure, and it's fantastic. It's nostalgic, and it definitely does hold up. I mean, I watched it about a year ago, as I said, and exactly the same as when I was younger. And I don't see anyone talk about that. I mean, Funko make pops of everything. They're only just making one of Jim Hawkins. There's no figures. There's no nothing. There's no merch at all for this film.
When did it come out?
2002.
Oh, so it's old.
2002.
Genuinely didn't know that existed.
It's fantastic.
It's a great era of Disney, the kind of like mid 1990s to 2005. But again, I'm probably biased because that was when I was growing up with Disney films. But that is an incredibly niche, underappreciated film, which I guess completely buys into how it's underappreciated. So
exactly. See, I didn't prepare, but it just came to me.
And a TV show, or are we just
TV show? It's one that's on E4 and the CW in America, I'm guessing. It's called The 100, and I've not seen all of the show, but it's basically like the world's gone to shit, and they send a group of people up to space in a space station, whatever, and they're there for years and years and years. But the space station starts to deplete, so they send a group of 100 prisoners down to Earth to see if it's habitable again. And I've not seen the whole show. I think I've seen the first 2.5 seasons. I think there's like 6 or 7 maybe. But what I saw was great. I think it did lose its touch a little bit, but I was a fan of that from what I saw. And I don't see many people talking about it.
I've heard that as well. I heard that the first couple seasons were like revolutionary, and that it was such an interesting and intriguing concept. And then, like with anything in terms of intriguing concepts, they seem to die after 2 or 3 seasons because they overdo them, make the ridiculous cough, walking nerd cough. No, I've not seen it, but it's been on my watch list for ages.
Yeah, the first season was fantastic. So I was like a teenager at that stage, obviously, and it was on E4, and I didn't have I only had preview, so I was like didn't have much experience of watching like cool shows. It was on E4, and when I saw the advert, so I used to watch The Big Bang Theory all the time, so it'd always be on the adverts on E4. And I remember staying up late because it was past my bedtime to watch it. And it was just fantastic from the first episode. But as you said, it just dips quite quickly after the first few seasons.
Yeah. Is that on CW?
I think so, yeah. I think it's a CW show.
Because that is very much a theme with CW shows, with Arrow, with The Flash, with that. Have any of you watched The Flash?
Yeah, I watched until season 5, maybe a few episodes into season 6.
So you got out kind of before it went to absolute shite.
Mm-hmm.
Because Liam, did you say you'd seen it or no?
No.
So they have like this universe. You've got Arrow, Flash, and then the Legends of Tomorrow, I think. And Arrow was all right. And Flash was quite good for the first like 3 or 4 seasons. And then out of nowhere, the CW just kind of cut the budget for it. And so as a result, the CGI has just like, it wouldn't look out of place at some kind of like BTEC university film club.
Yeah, I've seen some of the stuff on TikTok. It looks atrocious.
That's her.
That is, what's that called?
An absolute
Atlantis?
delight.
Atlantis. She's no Princess Jasmine, to be fair.
I'll tell you what, we could do an entire segment on princesses.
That's a tier list one week.
Yeah.
And then get cancelled.
So
Does
for
Leia
me-
count?
Who?
She does now.
Leia.
Technically, yeah. And Black Widow. Well, I guess she's not a princess, is she?
I was going to say, what's she a princess
No.
of?
Of my heart. So for me, I couldn't narrow down. I mean, I have narrowed down the film, but I had a plethora of options. I'll reel off the first couple. I had the Batman Begins and Dark Knight Rises, but that's a boring answer because the Dark Knight gets so much love that the other two get forgotten. But my number 2 was Law Abiding Citizen with Gerard Butler. I think that's in the same region of Shooter in terms of like film 4 at 9 p.m. That's probably one of my favorite all-time films. But my number 1 is the film Troy with Brad Pitt. And I don't know if you've all seen it, but it is basically the historical story of Troy and how the Greeks.
The inaccurate.
Yeah, it's very inaccurate.
The one where like there are people in that, like historical figures who are in that who are like 300-400 years difference to Troy. But yeah, never mind.
But it is.
Oh yeah.
It was one of those just kind of when I was 12, 13, just the combination of the gore, the like Helen of Troy obviously being known as the most beautiful woman ever. It just had action, it had the scenery, it was funny. Like I just absolutely love it. And it never and to be fair, it may quite rightly not get spoken about in this conversation. But like to me, I've always seen it as like a bit of a masterpiece because it's one of those classics, 2.5 hours long, which is long for back then. And it just never gets any love in terms of being one of the better films ever made, but I could very much be biased with it.
I love films like that. That leads me on a bit of a trail actually, because then I go from that to like The Scorpion King, which is like a shit film, but exactly that. But then that leads me to The Mummy. Now, the Mummy franchise, certainly the first 2, used to get a lot of love, but they don't really they're not out there as much anymore. But 2 fantastic films.
Yeah, they are very good. I used to have
maybe we'll get a bit of love now. Brendan Fraser's like kind of the darling of Hollywood.
Yeah. I had an undying fear for scarab beetles from that film.
Yes.
Like crawling like under your skin. Oh, gives me the heebie-jeebies.
Good choice, though. I like that one. TV show?
This might be a controversial one, but Gotham. I know
that was my second choice. If I didn't have Harley Quinn,
everyone gives it so much shit for being dreadful, and I've never seen it. As in, I've never seen why people think it's dreadful. It to me is the first time any major media company has done Batman without Batman, and I think it's such a unique take on the DC, on the kind of the world of Gotham. And I think they're bad guys and like the classic villains. They get like the perfect balance of doing those Easter eggs whilst also not just kind of ripping them off and copying them. And it's one of those ones that like I could quite happily sit there and just binge watch it, knowing that I've got that little Easter egg, but I'm also kind of still seeing kind of a crime noir action series.
So my thing with Gotham was I watched it and loved it, but I remember it quite often like jumped around channels, like different. I think it was on Channel 5, then it jumped to E4, and there were big gaps. So I was watching it like week on week, and then there was like massive gaps between series, and that's where it lost me. It wasn't so much the story; it was just kind of there were those big gaps. Just kind of lost interest, and then never picked it back up.
I think there was like a 2 or 3 year period in the middle where I think in America, I think it flipped from Fox to is either Fox to CW or like Netflix to Fox or something like that, where they just kind of completely changed the direction of it a little bit. But James's comment just there talking about how it was they kind of jumped around timelines and things like that. I kind of like, to me, that's somewhat kind of what Gotham's like. It is a little bit, it's kind of an unspoken dystopian universe. Like it's it's people and like modern day, but it's also kind of stuck 20 years in the past kind of thing, which I think adds to the show. But I can see why that would take people out of it.
I think that's sort of a similar situation to Revenge of the Sith, where it's like it's not amazing, but it's mine not amazing. Like that show means a lot to me because I started it on the first episode when season 1 came out and watched it every single Monday for the next like 8 years or whatever. I watched every episode when it came out on Monday for the 8 years it was coming out or something like that. So it was with me for a big portion of my life.
I can't remember the last time I watched a TV show on the day or like the like TV, the time it came out on the TV slot. Never for so long now. I just binge watch them all. Wait for it to finish and binge watch.
A good little Easter egg for Gotham as well is that it introduced. I always forget his name. The actor who plays Cal Kestis as well.
Cameron Monaghan.
Yeah.
Is he the guy? Was he the Joker?
Yeah.
Does he? So later on, does he get confirmed as the Joker? Because it kind of hints that he is, but he's never called. Yeah.
I think he has to.
I think the showrunners said something like he's a what do you call it? Like a pre-something precedent, or what do you call it? I don't know what the word is. Pre-something.
What I mean.
For the Joker to proceed. Like he
inspiration.
Yeah. Because they couldn't use the actual Joker for because like that character is reserved for big budget things.
Yeah, that makes sense. Like you can allude to him and go from there. Very quickly before we move off the Batman franchise, any thoughts on Lady Gaga, because she started to release some images of her as Harley Quinn?
I might be the minority in this, but I did not rate that Joker film, and as a result, I'm not remotely hyped for the subsequent films either. Like I'll watch them, but I don't think I can get myself immersed in a musical Joker film.
Yeah, that might be tough.
Like I just won't look forward to it.
I mean, you can't really see what she looks like though.
No, but it starts to build up to it, like just that hype. I don't like that we have multiple versions of the same character out at it, because all it's going to do is draw comparisons, and Margot does a very good, like great, but very clearly what's going to be a very different version of that character. And I just think it kind of naturally draws criticism, but I massively simp for Lady Gaga, like that is.
I was watching that documentary on loop.
Which one?
The Lady Gaga documentary on Netflix.
I haven't seen it.
I've only seen one part of it.
I need to watch that. But thank you. Moving on. So my final one, my TV show, is Boardwalk Empire with Steve Buscemi. Anybody seen it?
Never seen it. Never heard of it.
What? Chat? Like, please let me know. So, if you remember when like Sky Atlantic was born, and it was basically the Sky HBO partnership, and they just start chucking over like HBO films like left, right, and center. And it's set in like the 1920s Prohibition. I think like is essentially the original Peaky Blinders, and I don't rate Peaky Blinders, by the way.
What?
But yeah, it's like it's proper, like, because Steve Buscemi's character Nucky Thompson is like, he's a politician, but he kind of like, he's got this really public face and everybody loves him, but at the same time he's like the real gangster. Stephen Graham is in it. If you ever need an endorsement, Stephen Graham is one of those actors that you just watch it because he's in it. Plays Al Capone fantastically. A lot of actors kind of come through and made their name in it. I would highly recommend it. Towards the end, it dragged, like kind of the middle to the end, it dragged a little bit, but then I don't know if it was just because they were pushing towards the final circle, or they recognized it and then closed it off, which I always like. I hate when things drag on too much, which I'm doing now. But yeah, I think it was only like 5 or 6 series, and it was a fantastic series that I would highly recommend. But it's one of those that certainly for your generation is probably just a little bit before your time. Whereas James, who's closer to my generation, he gets it. Good lad, James. Always liked you. But yeah, highly recommend it.
I'll add it to the list.
There's a lot of titties in it as well.
Sold. Where is it? Netflix, Disney? Well,
it's probably on Sky Now TV, because it's one of the HBO shows. So it was like a Sky Atlantic original. I assume it's still on there. But yeah, God tier show.
All right, well, I'll add it to the list. Speaking of TV networks, Disney have come under cop from Qui-Gon Jinn himself. Qui-Gon Jinn or Jinn? Nathan, take it away.
So I've got the article. Well, I've got a article up in front of me, and Liam Neeson wants fewer Star Wars movies and shows. Wow, yeah, what are you saying up there? It's taken away the mystery and the magic. I can see where he's coming from, taking away the mystery and the magic, because until recently, Star Wars was exclusively in cinemas, and you have to make it an event to go and see a Star Wars film. You couldn't just access it anywhere and watch multiple shows on Disney Plus or whatever. You go to the cinema, it's special, and you're sat there in the darkness and you hear that music and you see it come on the screen, Star Wars. It's something that's very special, and then definitely not the same when you're sat at home watching it on the TV and it comes on and it's another episode of The Bad Batch, another episode of Book of Boba Fett. I couldn't think of any shows then. But I don't know, I felt like this recently as well, because I can see Marvel heading in the same direction. There's a lot of Marvel lately. All the films, all the shows, and it is getting a little bit too much. The way I think of it is, if you find a bit of food that you really like, and then you have it again and again and again, you slowly start to hate it and loathe it every time you have that bit of food, which is a strange analogy to compare to Star Wars.
Unless you're Harvey with pizza.
Unless you're Harvey with pizza.
I
think that too much of a good thing could potentially ruin it. So I think they're making spin-offs of everything, and it could slow down, but I don't think it needs to, because nothing is necessarily bad. There's bad parts of all of the spin-offs they're doing, but I don't think it's reached that point where it's stale just yet.
Yeah. So for me, I'm okay with the Star Wars content. I'm not okay with the Marvel content. And I think the thing with Star Wars is it is such a wide universe, and literally it is planets. Like, you can easily create spin-offs that don't necessarily interlude with the rest of the wider universe. And so you can like I'm assuming I could probably watch Andor separately and still enjoy Andor as a series, having not probably watched the main Star Wars films. Whereas it feels like at the moment with Marvel is if I don't watch Miss Marvel or She-Hulk, I'm not going to understand Kang Dynasty in 3 years' time. And
I haven't seen them yet. I can't.
you're right. I apart from WandaVision, I haven't finished any of the Marvel series and Loki. I haven't finished or started the rest of the Marvel series because I just I find them fun and intriguing, and then I find myself halfway through being like, this is so incredibly average. And if it wasn't tied to the wider universe, I would have stopped watching.
Yeah, because apart from those two, none of them really matter at the moment.
I will talk about this more next week because by next week, everybody has had at least a good opportunity to see Ant-Man. And I think by next week, all of us will have touched on it. But what I'll see is with the Marvel stuff is there is only so many times you can tell an individual story when essentially they go through the same character arc of all smelling of roses, come up against some foe, overcome, they find a way of coming back, and then away you go. Or an origin story. Their origin stories are nuanced, but they're pretty much all the same, and where they've just threw origin story after origin story. But yeah, we'll kind of touch on that next week. But for Star Wars, I think exactly the same, Max. Is the universe is massive, and they're only just starting to kind of come out of the box. But where Marvel is also restricted in the timeline, it's set now. Now, obviously, they can deviate a little bit forward and back depending on whose story they're telling, but they're telling stories of characters that are set today. Whereas Star Wars, again, the timeline is there is so much we want from the past. We want High Republic. We want to go back as far as we can and understand. The possibilities are endless in that. I think Star Wars and Lucasfilm got a lot of flack, particularly on the back of the sequels. And Disney's ruined Star Wars and all that. But there is a clear line that was drawn after the sequels where actually you can see real strategy and thought into how they just kind of ooze the universe out, and it's just gradually grown from one story, one character to the next, and then it just kind of blending out. Book of Boba Fett was a disappointing one for me because I think everybody just wanted that self-contained story rather than using Boba Fett to further a character that really didn't need it. So I think they really have to be careful with things like that. But on the most part, on the rest of it, more of it. And people didn't love Visions. There were a couple of good episodes, but you know what? I'm going to really enjoy Vision. I'll sit down and watch Visions Series 2 with excitement, especially the Wallace and Gromit version. And I hope there is a Wallace and Gromit Easter egg in there. That has to be.
It's like Space Wensleydale or something.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's two worlds colliding that I never thought ever would happen.
I'm just so intrigued. It's going to look like Robot Chicken or something. It's just I'm so.
And it's
intrigued.
called I Am Your Mother. That is such a British title for it as well. That is so British.
Do you reckon Liam Neeson's being a bit of a hypocrite, considering I know it was literally one scene in Kenobi, but he is securing that Disney bag and then trash talking them? So, is he a hypocrite or is it?
There was a quote on here. I've lost it now.
I haven't read the article, but I don't know if he's saying yes, there's space to do more, but don't do loads more, which would then make sense because I think if you were to scale it back, Kenobi is definitely one of those things that you would ask for. That if we went all the way back to Disney buying Star Wars, people would want to see that Kenobi series. So you'd be like, right, okay. So, but then I don't know if what he is saying is then we're just kind of getting all these characters that nobody's asking for. But my argument is actually that stuff is the better stuff. Andor is the best thing that has come out of Disney and potentially Lucasfilm ever.
Bold.
So I've got a bit of what he said. He said, "It was nice to do that little bit with you and after 25 years. I only showed up in the last episode and had 2 lines of dialogue. That was good. I loved it, but that's it." So I think he just wanted to do that little bit. But it is set up nicely for season 2 with him being quite a big character.
I do kind of rate Parsek's comment where there was like, well, what if he's just trying to throw him off the scent of him returning? Because obviously, like, there was that interview before Kenobi where he's like, they're still making Star Wars shows. You know, he's like, I thought Star Wars was done. I didn't think they were still making Star Wars.
Is that the one where he says something like, I don't do TV shows, they can't afford me, or something like that?
Yeah, he said
I only do the big
Star
screen.
Wars shows. He doesn't do TV shows, and he didn't realize they were still making Star Wars content, is what he said in that interview. So, you know, could be a similar deal here.
It could be, but it's, I suppose what he said is certainly worthy of discussion. And I think, like, I've got no concerns broadly on the Star Wars universe. I think that you're always going to do it when you're making content on such mass. There are going to be errors along the way. It's a shame that the one everybody seems to agree with is the Boba Fett one. But yeah, I just think, like, as long as they continue on this path, then forever will it dominate my destiny.
Yeah, I maintain. I think the Star Wars, from my point of view, Star Wars have it fine. Like, I don't feel overwhelmed with content. Like, I've not seen some of it, but I will at some point watch it all. Whereas, despite the fact I need to watch it to understand the future of the Marvel films, I won't watch half of the Marvel shows.
You sound like Mrs. Obi-Wan. Like, she was sat waiting to go in and see Ant-Man last night, and she's like, right, what do I need to know about this one? I'm like, right, okay. So remember in, like, Loki, right at the end, that's Kang. He's going to be a big part in this. And then Ant-Man. You just need to know that Ant-Man is Paul Rudd.
Yeah.
And he gets big or gets small.
Sold.
No, I agree. So will you, with Mando, will you watch that week on week, or will you let that build up?
I probably would watch that week on week, because it's like Mando as a character is one of my favorite characters, and so it's kind of like I want to be able to talk about it. Whereas some of the other things, if I get a Bad Batch spoiler, I don't care. Whereas I would want to watch Mando to be able to talk about Mando with you guys and with friends and stuff like that, because like it is going to be a very hyped show. Because I think that kind of kicked off the realm of Star Wars shows on Disney, didn't it? So it's kind of like the OG a little bit. But yeah, I think just so I can keep up with conversation, I'll probably watch that week to week.
Good, because I'm not talking about that. Yeah, I think we'll have like 5 days notice, so yeah, we can talk about that. James, if you want to talk Ant-Man, more than happy to jump into DMs, but yeah, I don't even want to, because I don't trust myself. I don't want to kind of open my thoughts, because I can open a can of worms. But yeah, it's Ant-Man is film club next week, so we'll all have seen, oh, Nathan's worried that he's going to see something, so he's run away. So yeah, we'll talk about it properly next week, but I do have thoughts on it.
We're all hatted up now. Nathan was the only outlier.
Yeah, Max kicked him off.
Yeah, he's like, you're not wearing a hat, fuck off.
What do you reckon? Phones run out of battery?
Someone's called him.
Yeah, that's a good shout.
Yeah, never mind. But yeah, I think just, yeah, watch what you're doing, Kathleen and Favreau and all. Oh, so actually, here's a question, because this is relevant. From Filoni, is there too much Order 66?
I like it. Like, it bores me that it's in every single commercial, like every single advert for any of the Star Wars shows, they show some sort of glimpse of it. But I think a lot of what it's involved in is relevant. And I think it is quite a not fun, but like enjoyable part of the Star Wars universe, in my opinion.
Not to sound like a sadist. but yes,
I like death.
the mass slaughter of children and women and wizards.
Harvey?
Yeah,
Too
I think
much,
as long as
too
he
little?
doesn't.
Nah. Definitely not.
More. I want
yeah.
more.
I do. I want more, and I know I shouldn't. Yeah, I love Order 66 stuff. I want to see it from as many people's perspective as possible. I love it.
Harvey is the equivalent of, do you know when you're playing like someone really trolley on FIFA online and you score a goal against them and you just let the replay just run over and over and over. That's
Doing
basically
this.
Harvey. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
Harvey watching Order 66.
What about you? Too much? Too little?
It is relevant, but it seems that like Filoni has got a hard on for it. So it's like, can you like just be mindful of it? Because if we get any more, then, and I suppose, so the Grogu stuff is like good and how they've done it and like to incorporate it, and they were no doubt going to get more, but yeah, they just, I don't know. I'm mindful of it now, but I'm not concerned yet, but I'm mindful of where does it stop.
Yeah. Nathan,
I'd rather you just made an Order 66 show. Just make a show of it.
Well, they have like on YouTube and other places, people have compiled like all of the Order 66 scenes in chronological order, and it's like 40 minutes long. Like, I will happily sit there and watch that.
Nathan, too much or too little Order 66 across all the Star Wars medias?
Ooh, I think everything that's coming out these days has got a little bit of Order 66. Because obviously the clones are so loved. Oh, I don't know. There's so many stories that can be told, though, throughout Order 66. And I think we're going to see a lot more in Mando Season 3 with Grogu. Oh, I don't know.
I like it.
Oh, it's like, good. It's interesting.
I don't know what you call it, but you know, like, is it in Loki? I think it's in Loki when they talk about it's like a something in time, where it's like an absolute point in time or whatever.
Oh, yeah.
It's like it can't be changed or whatever. Like, that's what Order 66 in Star Wars is for me. It's just like such a monumental point in time that it's like I can't get enough of it, because I just want to see it from as many people's perspective as possible. It's such a galaxy changing event. It's not something that it's like, oh, you just see it once and you're like, damn, that was pretty tough, and then move on. It's like I want all the context I can get around it from everyone's perspective. I want to know. Same thing with like the second Death Star explosion. Like every time they give us that from another person's perspective, I'm loving it. Like in Mando Season 2, when we saw the bar on Mos Pelgo's reaction to the Death Star 2 being destroyed, or in the Battlefront 2 campaign where we see Empire soldiers' reaction to the second Death Star being exploded. You know, I love that because, again, it's such a big monumental point in time in the Star Wars story. I want to get as much context and as much perspective on it as possible from everyone.
Yeah. I'm really on the fence with it, because it's just like, you don't want to keep seeing it over and over again, but if they're doing it to further the story, which the Yoda thing, the Grogu thing really makes sense. But, and good to see it in live action as well, like the actual clones, like the 501st, that was cool as well. So I think it's one to just keep an eye on. Don't overdo it.
I would probably have an issue with it if it was just kind of like, oh, we've got this Star Wars show, but I don't think it's that good, so we'll just whack Order 66 in it so the fans like our show, or something like that. If they just start being like, oh, people like Order 66, we'll put that in. But yeah, like then I would,
we're going to see it.
Have a problem with it.
We're going to see it in Mando Season 2. We're probably going to see it in the Ahsoka show in some way, shape, or form. So it's not going anywhere just yet.
Well, Quinlan Voss has been mentioned in Kenobi, so he's going to pop up somewhere, and then we're going to get his perspective on it. So, and he might be the one that saved Grogu, we don't know. But we'll get it. But as long as it's done right and not too often, I'm cool with it. The good thing is, as Lego fans, like, I'm not particularly bothered about this, but obviously there's a lot of love for clones. And the more they show that, the more hype there is for clones, and the more chance that Lego will make Lego clones.
Although that being said, not to do a shameless plug, but I have so many clones on my Bricklink store that need selling. So go buy. I reckon those clones, those Lego clones that came out in that like blister pack, I reckon I've topped 50 or 60 now. And I thought that they would be flying out like nobody's business, and I haven't sold a single one. So I've got the price quite high, but
how much?
I think so. I'm listing them 10 at a time, and I think I've got them at $750 each, and I think the cheapest is about $650. So it's like if you want bulk, I can give it to you, but you're going to pay a premium. But
you think people are waiting just to see if they bang them in another set?
Probably. I could imagine it might come out. The thing is because like luckily it's not going to come out in a cheaper set. Like the blister pack will be the cheapest thing it can come out in, unless it comes out in a CMF or something like that. On to the next segment. But I think if they bring one out in like a $400 set, like it's not going to affect the value at all. So I think I'm fine in that regard. And they will sell. And they're popular as well. Everyone wants clones. But that is actually a very good segue into our final segment of the day, where I know that this happens quite a lot, but we've seemingly had a lot of Lego leaks in the last week or so. I guess it's because they're coming out for this year, and surprisingly we've not really talked that much about Lego on this podcast in the last kind of 3 or 4 weeks, probably because I blame James. He doesn't do Legos. So now that he's gone, we can get discussing. And I think the first one, I'm just going to knock it straight out of the bag, is the very unofficially rumored Lego CMF series, which Liam, if you saw Liam's TikTok earlier today, alluded to the fact that Lego, who have never done a collectible minifigure series, if you don't know, it's like the £3.50 minifigure bags for Star Wars. And the reason they don't do that, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, is because Hasbro have the licensing for individually sold Star Wars figures, which is why Lego don't do it. But there was some rumors going around on Facebook and all other reputable sites suggesting that they might be coming out at some point. Is this fact or is this cap?
It's cap.
Reckon 100%.
So I mean, you never know, but it kind of like blew up a little bit like this evening, and people are saying like, yeah, I know the person who made this up and they ran it by me and stuff like that. Like, does this look legit as like a joke? So yeah, it's I think cap.
Yeah, I agree.
I don't think, I think it was made to look like it was one of the, like the leaks always have like a style. It was made to look like it was one of them, but it was never posted on one of those pages. So yeah, I think there's nothing in it, but it did all right in views, so I'll leave the video up.
Yeah.
I think it's too good to be true.
What figs would you want if it was true?
I think it would be great if they would go with if they would do one series per movie or one series per trilogy or something like that.
It's a good idea.
Yeah, I agree. It would be so tough. Unless, I mean, if they did, I think if the Hasbro thing is real because it's been disputed, but if it is legit, and they can do the deal as well, like we've seen, if there was anything that we're ever going to be able to do it for, it'd be for a limited CMF series, considering they're on shelves for like 6 months.
Yeah, they can work around it. Like they sold that 20th anniversary Obi-Wan Kenobi fig on his own in a foil pack. They've done the foil. There's ways around it.
There is, and I believe
same with pop vinyls and their bobbleheads, because they're not allowed to sell Star Wars action figures. They're just making bobbleheads. There's ways around it.
So there's definitely ways around, but I believe they've got a good relationship with Hasbro, and they could definitely do it as a CMF. They would never be able to do it as an actual ever present. But yeah, I think if you would realistically, you would get a one-off, or you would go into it not expecting a second series, and if you get it, it's a bonus. So you would have to pick your like top 12.
Could just be a few of the iconic characters from each film trilogy, I'm guessing then.
You would hope it would be ones that are like hard to find, or ones that are, not in any sets. Like, I'm not saying like stick the original Cloud City Boba Fett in there. Keep that as it is. But I mean, like an updated version of rare figures. So maybe throw in like a Slave Leia or a Jango Fett, something like that.
No, but now like we'd get. Oh, carry Max.
I was going to say, I if they were to do it, I have every faith they'd do it wrong. And what I mean by that is like you're not getting good figs. And what it would be, for example, like at the moment you've got the Dark Trooper attack set, and one of the figures would be a Dark Trooper, and so it would be like, I reckon if they were to do it, it would be figs they've already got available that they're making available for a cheaper version. Now, the Dark Trooper is a bad example because they wouldn't sell the Dark Trooper set if they put that in a set, but it would be like that kind of fig, kind of like a set, a figure that you could probably get in a set for under $100.
How did you know? That's what I was going to say. So I got nothing to say now.
I mean, I would definitely expect like the entire first series to be like Farm Boy Luke, Beskar Mando,
a battle droid,
and Solo
battle droid. Yeah,
that would be the problem, wouldn't it? Is like, what figures would you do that? Like, they haven't already done. So a bit of what I think could work is if you did it as like the Jedi Council, because I don't know how many sit on the council at any given time, but you could probably do the council over a couple of films and make 12 from that. Like that would be quite cool, I think. And then like it's something a bit different. It is then an absolute complete set. I think something like that. And there's probably not any figs in that I can think of that would be particularly that existed here and are particularly expensive. Like Coleman Treble obviously is, he's about 40-50 quid last I saw, but he's not like Cloud City Boba Fett. He's not over 100 quid. He's not like Phase 2 Rex. So nobody's like really going to get upset if they made a new version of him. 12 members. There you go, James. Like, it's almost like I knew and I just didn't back myself. So there you go. That would be mine.
Yeah, there's potential for it to be really good because with most CMFs, they do put quite a lot of detail into it, like all leg printing and arm printing, and they quite often have new molds for stuff. So if they did it for Star Wars, they could make the figures that we know and have seen a lot before. They could dramatically improve them if they were to do so, and if they were to do it right, which they wouldn't do. As Max said.
No.
Yeah. If they would do it right, it'd be so fucking good though. Like if they did it like for trilogies, you could have the prequel trilogy and you could get like a Jango Fett, a Poggle the Lesser, Count Dooku, Chancellor Palpatine, get some sick ones, and then they do the originals, and then they could do like the spin-offs as well. So you can get like a nice Cassian and a Krennic and stuff,
they really could. Like, you think how good the Marvel series was, and like some of those figs, like in the accessories that came with them, were fantastic. But
instead of a Star Wars CMF series, we're getting good old Star Wars mechs.
Oh,
who asked for that?
When will they stop releasing? I know that Lego is a kid's toy, but when will they stop with these buildable mechs? I'm on my knees begging.
It's shocking. It's going to be the same Boba Fett with the wrong helmet color.
Yeah,
and no improvement.
Unless they make a Cloud City Boba Fett mech, I'm not buying it.
What else have they leaked? They've got
they make a Slave Leia mech. I'll buy that.
They leaked the buildable Chewie. Buying that.
Only if it's got the Bunda. The Bunda, the Disneyland one does. Yeah.
There's a Swamp Speeder which might have the clones in.
Yeah, that's true. That was what, $40? Was it quoted at?
I think so, yeah.
To be fair, I feel I could benefit from a set that requires lots of clones. So if people bought Swamp Speeders and then they wanted to build it out, Brick Pursuit on Bricklink. What else did they bring out? I have a couple
This
of.
is an older one, but the sail barge is getting
Oh,
a
yeah.
bit creamy.
Yeah.
Same with the Jabba's Palace diorama.
Is the
Yeah, I'm
sail
looking forward
is the
to it.
sail barge? Do we reckon it's going to be a set or is it a diorama?
The sail barge was $400, so that's going to be a set, I would say. But then the diorama for Jabba's Palace was a diorama, and what was that, like $80, something like that?
That's got a lot of potential. I think that could be really good.
I hope they do the figs justice on that set because
They probably will.
A lot of figs from that scene are very expensive.
There isn't many though. I think the leaked fig lineup was something like C-3PO, R2, Jabba, Han and Carbonite, and Bail Slayer.
That's
Which is, yeah, that's about right, isn't it? Because they're doing it well to avoid Ula. So they're doing it that moment of just after Ula's been eaten by the Rancor, and then just before Leia gets put in the gold bikini. So they're like it's that sweet spot for them where we can
can't let us have anything nice, can they? We have our little Lego bikini women.
I've got mine, Max. I've got mine.
I think the Leia fig would be cool. It's funny, I like seeing everyone try and sell. So that is it Bausch? That fig is currently worth 75 quid. And everyone is trying to flog it at the moment because they know that the new one is going to likely be pretty much the same and therefore will be available for 15, 20 quid.
Well, I mean, let's see. Because what I think typically, like, tell me a minifigure since probably 2011, 12 onwards that got better when they made a newer version of it. Like that 2011 to 2015 was like the golden era of Lego Star Wars minifigures, I think. Like that, just so many figs in that time that just hit, and then they've made another version of them and they're not as good. So I'm interested to see what they do. I wouldn't be surprised if the Bouche was like dual molded or double parted or something, like it was like eclipsed together and it's just going to be the same,
like the Iron Man helmet or something like that.
Yeah, just like I don't know. We'll see. We will see. But yeah, I'm intrigued, and in some ways, it solves the problem for me because I really like the dioramas, and I like how little space they take compared to like big sets. I think they're ideal for adult collectors.
Yeah.
But then I'm seeing that as if like I'm going to sell me Jabba's Palace and Rancor Pit.
Another Star Wars set that got leaked is the Yavin 4 Rebel base. Thoughts and feelings?
Is that
the pictures?
Oh, no, I was going to say the picture's just a crappy mock, right?
Yeah, that picture was an unreleased set from back in the day.
Ah, right. The green BS plate.
12 minifigures.
No, 12 plus. Oh yeah. Sorry, yeah. Interesting. That's a
lot
of minifigures for 160.
The price.
Yeah, I mean the piece to price isn't great, but I assume there'd be pretty big pieces if it's a full, big bunker thing.
Like what figs come? What figs would you expect in that if you're getting 12? Is that going to be 6 battle droids?
No, they're going
2 rebel troopers.
Battle droids in a New Hope scene. Come on,
but as in they always say 12 minifigs and then they give you 9 gonk droids, and it's like, well, that's not a minifig.
There'll definitely be a gonk droid. There'll be General Dodana, who's already in the X-wing. There'll be Princess Leia. There'll be Luke, Han, Chewie. You'll probably have.
You'll obviously get Mon Mothma.
We might get Biggs, Wedge. So we'd probably get like a couple of variants of X-wing pilots.
I wonder if they'll do it like at the Yavin ceremony, so then you get like Yavin ceremony Luke and Han.
Ooh.
They also have quite boring figs, to be honest.
Well, yeah. But then the little rebels that are on there, like the seals of those will go through the roof because everybody will want to make the whole the scene.
They'd probably give you 4. That'd probably be 4 of the figures easy there, Rebel Troopers, if they do it as the ceremony.
Yeah, with different heads though, so they all have so it's 4 different minifigures, but it's essentially, I think they'll pack it out with like X-wing pilots and things like that. But then you'll have like key characters throughout. We'll get another C-3PO and R2-D2 as well.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
So
I'm excited for that one.
nextly, I've mixed up. We've not just gone Star Wars. We've got this is a rumored or leaked Hogwarts Harry Potter set, which I think could look quite cool because I like Harry Potter, but I'm never displaying the Hogwarts castle builds. Whereas I feel like this micro scale diorama style Hogwarts could be quite cool. Thoughts and feelings. Cop or drop.
Have we got any idea of size or scale of that?
2,000 pieces. That's all I can give you.
So it's definitely going to be small pieces because that's double the pieces of the Yavin base and the same price. So it must be like a small sort of thing like the architecture sets or something.
Yeah,
like
could it be like a similar scale to the little Disney castle?
like a Colosseum?
Yeah,
It'd be base plate size, surely.
that's what I was thinking. Base plate, yeah.
That would make sense. I think I'm not enough of a Harry Potter fan to buy its Lego, but if it was on deal, if it was at Zavi using code Pursuit, I might buy it.
I feel like that's like an easy Harry Potter set to buy because if it's like the one thing from Harry Potter and it's like there's no figs, so it's not like you're having to buy more sets to get all the figs for it, and it's not like because I think all the Harry Potter sets don't they all like connect together or something like that. So it's
Some
like,
of them do. The latest Hogwarts ones do.
One.
Sorry, don't count.
If I was to buy a Harry Potter set, I'd buy that one, but I'm not going to.
Agreed. Next up, it excites me. I'm will hold my thoughts and feelings until I've seen it. But I feel like it's long overdue. Captain America Shield.
It would look great next to Mjolnir as well.
So,
it's also quite cheap.
What was it? 3,000 pieces. It's going to be a decent size.
Oh,
You think like Mjolnir is not far. It can't be far off like screen accurate size. So the one thing I hope with it is that they recognize how people want to display it. Now they'll probably build a stand for it, but I'd love them to build like a wall hanger in it, so it just hangs on a wall.
Kind of like
the Batwing.
Yeah. So it's so that it's designed to go on the wall because that's how people are going to want to display it.
Yeah. You're right though. It will need to be like not necessarily life size, but it needs to be big because it's gonna if it's dinner plate size, it's gonna look shit. Whereas, like I think, like looking at the Batwing I've got above me, I would say it's gonna be about that size. But it has the potential to be one of the most unbelievably boring builds you'll ever do.
What are we saying? Tiles or studs?
A bit of both.
It has to be studs.
Yeah.
It has to be.
A mix of the two wouldn't look very good, I don't think.
It has to be shiny. Like it can't.
That's what I'm saying.
Can't be
I mean, it would be either way. It will be easy to tile with. There's a million red and blue tiles on Bricklink, so you're not.
Do you think they would maybe do a bit of both and because it's different circles. There's circles on the shield. They would probably put some of the blue circles or whatever on it, tile them, and then leave the rest studs. Kind of like a Mando helmet type deal.
I'm really I really like that one. That's a set that
that's really like Lego. It's like it is a displayable set that I would be excited to have up on my wall or in my room.
And do you know, it'd be pretty cool to play with as well. Like, imagine dueling one of yours with Mjolnir, and you're smashing, and then it's imagine a really good camera taking long exposure pictures where the Legos smashing and Thor's hammer, Mjolnir is smashing and stuff. Yeah, that's happening. It's happening. But I really like that the Lego Marvel have really caught on to the adult theme. I think it's possibly taken over Star Wars in the displayability stuff. Some of the stuff just is far more eye catching.
What's next after his shield then? Like Loki's scepter or something like that?
Loki's helmet. I was thinking Ant-Man's helmet. Cool. I think if they've done Star-Lord, haven't they? So Ant-Man's helmet.
I'm thinking the pencil pot.
I'm thinking like prop wise, like life size Lego prop wise.
Stormbreaker,
Yeah,
that'd be tough. But like Stormbreaker, if you lay it down, like horizontally, that could be cool.
Mm-hmm.
What else have you got? You got
Black
the
Widow sticks.
the what?
Yeah.
Black Widow sticks.
That would be boring. What do you reckon? What do you reckon this is going to be? We've got two. We got this one and a DC rumor. It doesn't say what it is. My money is on the Avengers Tower.
That'd be good.
I just can't think what else it could be unless they re-release the Quinjet run helicarrier thing.
Oh yeah.
5,000 pieces, direct to consumer. Like that is bigger than the Hulk. Has to be. Like what else do they do from Avengers?
Could they do the Avengers headquarters? A big modular building.
That's Avengers.
Do people want that though? Like I think people would want a big Avengers Tower, wouldn't they?
Yeah.
Or like the campus tower. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
I would buy an Avengers Tower. I've still got Daily Bugle sealed in box behind me. It's been there for about 6 months, purely because I'm waiting for that Avengers Tower, and I'm like, if I want, I want it, and I will sell the Daily Bugle for it.
I would buy that. Give me UCS Black Widow's tits right now.
Get that.
Other than that, I don't know. I mean, it could be the new
Hulk's
Guardian
cock
shit.
while you're at it.
If they make the Guardian shit, I'll be absolutely fuming. Because I mean, they've come out with these absolute like garbage.
Yeah.
I mean, I haven't seen the trailer, so I don't know if these are relevant. But the 3 Guardian sets I've seen look like 3 of the worst Lego sets I could ever think of buying.
But Marvel is still very like Lego Marvel still very much targets the playability and the kids. Like on the vast majority, there is a vast difference between the kids sets and the playing sets and that. So it's cool. It's cool for what it is. It's not a display set. But yeah, I don't know. I genuinely don't know. It's a tough one of what it could be. What you could speculate, and then it'll come out. Like, would anybody have guessed the Sanctum Sanctorum before it was announced, or heavily But then you're like, oh yeah, that makes sense, and the buildings are doing well, so it would make sense to go back to Avengers Tower. But it's not massive, but there is one already out there, so we'll see.
Yeah,
we'll see.
Then finally, before we wrap it all up, we've got one more. This is big for me because DC have been garbage in the Lego community for the last kind of year or so. I'm assuming the minifig being 1989 is just a generic minifig rather than it being a 1989 base set. I know they're bringing out a play scale Batwing from 1989. It's like 400 pieces, or it's like $40, 400 pieces. Like that would be quite interesting.
I'll definitely cop that.
But do we reckon for 3,500 pieces D2C Batman set, are we thinking the newest Batmobile, or do you reckon they go building?
They've got a Batmobile, haven't they?
Yeah.
They've got a Batmobile out at the minute. They've got the Tumbler. So would they do
and they had
another...
the 1989.
And the Technics new, the Batman Batmobile.
If I could choose, it would be the Batmobile from the animated series. Like it's nothing mind blowing in terms of a Batmobile. It's just another Batmobile, but I think it's one of the most iconic Batmans ever. That I would love to have it on display. But if I was a betting man, and I am, I would put my money on a building of some sort, either a proper sized Batcave, Wayne Manor, like Arkham Asylum, something like that, because I feel like they've done a lot of vehicles in the DC Batman space that I feel like with how they're going with like the Sanctum, the Daily Bugle, like they are leaning into these buildings, and so I would probably put money on it.
We have had plenty of Batcaves over the years.
Yeah.
I mean, oh, sorry, no, we've had plenty of Arkham Asylums over the years, but we've never had like a proper big, like Sanctum Sanctorum or Daily Bugle style Arkham Asylum. I think the closest to that was probably the one from the Lego Batman movie.
Yeah.
From the Lego Batman movie. That's about the closest one. I've still got the Arkham Asylum Breakout from like 2015. But yeah, we haven't had like a proper big, full-sized one.
Does it say Batman or DC?
DC.
It says Lego Batman.
Lego
Batman.
DC
Yeah.
logo.
Yeah. Okay. I was just.
There is a Batman set coming out, which I am extremely excited for, and it might have touched on it on a previous episode, but it's like one of these like art style sets, but it's like a 3D like Gotham skyline from the animated series.
Oh, nice.
It comes with a few minifigs. I think it's like a combination of like that Van Gogh set combined with like the art sets, and I think again, going back to what you were saying about the shield, it's a very adult, displayable Lego set, and I
haven't heard that. That sounds great.
I'll try and find a link or a picture of it, or the rumored picture of it, and I'll send it over. But that being said, we have just clocked over an hour and a half, and so probably
good chat though. What you talk about?
I'm always fascinated how we kind of like. You kind of come up with some segments and you go, oh, we're going to struggle to get past 45 minutes here. And then we just chat so much shit. Yeah. Absolutely loving it. Has anyone got any final closing thoughts?
I need a wee.
Same.
There we go.
Just make sure, everybody, that you've watched Ant-Man Quantumania by next week, because that is our film club. And we'll talk about that and probably talk about... we'll talk about that. The other thing was just that we mentioned last week, and we chucked out something in the Discord about it this week, because we did the tier list or only for the Clone Wars, and then we talked about doing the tier list, and people were saying, yeah, we want to see that live. So we'll I think that's on us to organize when, but with Celebration right around the corner, I think we either do it the week before Celebration as a bit of a hype for Celebration, or that is our Celebration live show, but that might be a bit difficult to do. It just, we'll have to see. So yeah, I think we do that live, and if you haven't already, like, follow and share and all that. And I think someone, probably Max, has just dropped the Discord if you want to come and join our Discord as well. So yeah,
smile away, boys.
Thank you all for coming.
Thank you very much.
So much.
Thanks for having us.
Lovely to chat with you, lads.
And you.
See you later.
As always.